In 2001, the XFL, version number 1, not the more recent edition we know, began play. It was started by Vince McMahon, the Lord of the WWE, then known as the WWF. It leaned heavy into that WWE style of entertainment over sport aspect. There were a lot of cool things. Instead of a coin flip, 2 players would scramble to recover a loose ball. Player introductions were done live on the field instead of pre-recorded, and this guy got knocked unconscious, was taken off the field in a stretcher, then came back to play the very next week while wearing a neck brace, and dropped maybe the coolest quote in human history.
How in the world are you starting this game tonight after taking that hit just 6 days ago?
Well, let me answer that question by asking you 2 questions. 1, is this or is this not the XFL? Yes, it is. 2, do I or do I not currently have a pulse? Yes, I do. Let's play football.
But the smartest thing that the new league did was allow players to put whatever they wanted on the backs of their jerseys. While most sports stick with only a player's last name, the XFL let you choose. You could rep your children's name, an inside joke, and most important, a nickname. The greatest of these nicknames is not a hard question to answer. There were solid candidates all around. Deathblow, E-Rupt, Chuckwagon, Big Daddy, all good options. But it took less than 2 minutes into the first game of the 2001 season for the announcers and the whole world of testosterone-oozing fans to meet the king. And we hated him.
They could put any name they want on the back of their jersey, so you got nicknames, you got everything out there.
I know you got nicknames, but that seems to be a phrase.
He hate me.
He hate me.
Rod Smart was the boring text on his birth certificate. It seems like prior to this opening game, no one was prepared to see "He hate me" on a jersey. The former Western Kentucky running back had been cut by the San Diego Chargers last year. He was an NFL bubble guy, right on the edge of being good enough to make it, like a lot of the XFL player base. The announcers kept having fun with him the whole drive.
Knocking on the door.
He hate me, buddy.
He hate me.
Somebody in Western Kentucky maybe hate him.
After it ended in a field goal, the sideline reporter rushed over to get a statement from the man who had just single-handedly created thousands of XFL fans.
Rod Smart. Rod, of course, says "he hate me" on the back of his jersey. Rod, why do you have "he hate me" on your jersey?
Because they hate me, man. Look how they looking at me. Look. Baby, we're going to have to fight back.
Over the course of the season, we would come to learn more. The name exploded in popularity. He was the biggest draw to the entire league. He Hate Me was the first guy who really understood that whole WWE superstar persona thing. If the league was full of guys like him, it could have been a massive success. Unfortunately, he was the only one. This, of course, brought jealousy. In one game, the opposing team had 2 linebackers wear jerseys saying, "I hate he," and "I hate he too." Being able to change the jersey name every single week was a whole nother level of awesome. In a rematch between the 2 teams later that year, those same 2 linebackers used "Still Hate He" and "Still Hate He Too." We learned that the nickname came from one of Rod Smart's childhood friends as a mindset to have through football and life, to stay hungry. He believed that his friends hated him, his parents hated him, his coaches hated him, and especially opposing players when he was running by them and all they could see was the back of his jersey. Oh, they really hated him. We learned that his parents were likely driving forces when one of the most astonishing graphics I have ever seen during a live game popped up on the screen. The nicknames of Rod Smart's siblings included his brother Bone Bone and his sister Fat Girl. This is the XFL. The coaches speak like this.
Have some fun and win the dadgum football game.
The announcers with nicknames of their own like this.
I'm Jim Ross alongside Jesse, the Body Ventura, and Jesse tonight.
It's going to be a great game, JR. I'm pumped already.
I'm glad you are, folks.
And a player with a nickname that captivated anyone who saw it, who gave the league a chance to succeed and showed us it wasn't impossible for the XFL to work. But it didn't happen. The entire league folded after just a single season. He Hate Me would play for a second in the Canadian Football League, then make multiple NFL teams over the next few years, mostly as a special teamer, scoring one career touchdown and touching the ball in a Super Bowl. Spike Lee admitted that the title of his movie, She Hate Me, which came out 2 years later in 2003, was inspired by the nickname, and Rod Smart is even directly mentioned in the film. One of Smart's future teammates for the Carolina Panthers would later name one of his prized thoroughbred horses, She Hate Me. It is unarguably a legendary nickname, but it's just one of many. He Hate Me is not the first or best or most iconic or funniest nickname in the history of sports. It's a single page of a long book full of foolishness, legends, stories, and absolute nonsense. We'll find all of those and more, many more, in this video. This is the history of nicknames in sports. Actually, no. Welcome to the Chronicles of Monikers in Athletics. As so many things in life tend to naturally lean, nicknames are a subject that find their absolute peak in old-timey baseball. The Magic Johnsons of the world, sure, they're great, and we will get there, but I prefer the guts of this video to take place with nicknames most people have never heard of that will wildly shock you to just hear. They weren't the first ones ever used. I mean, Leonidas of Rhodes competed in the 2nd century BC and was nicknamed Triestes for winning 3 running events in a single Olympic Games. Triestes translates directly to the tripler. He also accomplished this feat in 4 consecutive ancient Olympic Games, giving him 12 all-time gold medals, or olive wreaths as they used back then, which stood as the all-around Olympic record for well over 2,000 years, until Michael Phelps broke it. Triestes still sits at number 2 on that all-time list. But the dawn of great modern epithets started with baseball. Not quite in the MLB, but before that was even a thing. Actually, it wasn't even professional baseball yet, at all. Just baseball. Guys playing for fun. The first nickname in the sport is unknown. Strong possibilities include Candy Cummings, a Hall of Famer who is the most accepted source as the creator of the curveball. The story of sports can be told through nicknames. Candy isn't too fun. Real name William Cummings, the name Candy was a common one at the time, bestowed upon people who were at the top of their field, the best at their craft. He likely got it at some point around 1865, before he allegedly created the curveball when he was just tinkering around, slowly mastering it. But he hadn't unveiled it to the world or even his team yet when they already thought that he was the best pitcher in the game. He was only 17 years old at the time and posted a 37-2 record on the season. A couple years later, when he was 19, he finally started to show off the curve publicly, and no one else knew how to hit it or throw it, so no one was able to practice hitting it except when playing against Candy. Some may have seen Candy as performing witchcraft with a baseball. Needless to say, he's in the Hall of Fame. The best competitor to him in terms of the first nickname is Charles Paber, who was likely the first left-handed pitcher in the sport's history and who was given the legendarily unexplainable nickname of the Old Woman in the Red Cap. Baseball's first and surely not last guy with a girly nickname has origins that are not quite known for sure. In other words, we don't know where the hell this came from, or why we called a grown man the Old Woman in the Red Cap. He played for the Unions of Morrisania, and it's believed that the team at least sometimes wore red hats. We know the name kinda appeared on a super early baseball card, printed out picture type of thing, that is usually dated around 1865 to 66. Whoever made the cards for the Unions of Morrisania squad must have really disliked him or had a weird inside joke with him to put the text "the old woman" under his individual picture. Interestingly, one of his teammates' cards, Dave Birdsall, had the text "the old man" under it, though he has not been linked to that nickname historically like Charlie has with the old woman in the red cap. Potential origins of the nickname vary. I've seen that it was a reference to this painting, which was released sometime a few years before the card. Probably, I don't know, no dates are concrete, we're in like Civil War times. Others credit Charles Dickens' novel A Tale of Two Cities and the female character Madame Defarge, who was described as wearing a red cap in the story. One baseball historian posed that many women in the French Revolution wore red caps atop their heads. Charles Paber, as the first lefty pitcher the game had seen, was viewed as something of a revolutionary. And some just say it was because of his jolly, dandy demeanor that his teammates used to poke fun at him for. The old woman, regardless, was a decent player, boasting a career .285 batting average, despite the first 6 years of his career, from age 18 to 24, not being counted, because stats weren't officially tracked yet, because it wasn't professional baseball yet, again, just amateurs playing for fun. But then he took part in the first ever baseball game that both teams were paid to play in as professionals in 1871, when his Cleveland Forest Cities lost to the Fort Wayne Kekiongas Statistics 2-0. That was also the first game that the old woman started officially being a player manager, and he was much worse at that, boasting one of the worst managerial records ever by leading his teams to 13 wins and 64 losses. The last hat that I'll at least sense and drop into the ring for the first ever nickname is that of John Phillips Jenkins Sensenderfer, or as we know and love him, Count Sensenderfer. It sounds like the name of Flint Lockwood's food creating machine if there was a European remake of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It's thought that the Count got his name as an 18-year-old in 1866, likely a year or so after the other two, for his A-tier mustache, along with, and I'm quoting directly here, his aristocratic aura. It was that or his womanizing, who knows. There's also a possibility that his family lineage traces back to this guy, Count Nicholas Ludwig von Zinzendorf, who was an actual count, like the European noble title, and founded the Bethlehem Church in America. Candy, the Count, and the old woman got the train started. Many, many more would buy a ticket to ride. Edward Nolan was a solid pitcher who played on some bad teams in the 1800s. He was the sole player in the major leagues at the time that I can confirm who had the name Nolan. I guess that's all the explanation required for his nickname, the only Nolan. It is nothing but a blessing that he passed away before ever having to witness the career of Nolan Ryan. I don't know that he could have handled it. Other potential reasons for the name are that he demanded to be the only pitcher on any team he was on, which he tried and failed to do in 1884 as a member of the Wilmington Quicksteps. Shout out Wilmington, Delaware. Never let the people say you have no major league sports history. Or it may have been a big ego. Some believe he nicknamed himself the one and only, and people just started calling him the only Nolan. There was also this famous minstrel performer who did drag shows in blackface, and people paid to see that, named Francis Leon. He got so big in the entertainment scene that people started copying his act and calling themselves Leon, prompting the actual Leon to begin performing under the name The Only Leon. The Only was sort of a common title for people who were really good at something, especially in the circus and performing industries. So maybe The Only Nolan was nicknamed after some risque entertainment that today is just wildly, incredibly offensive. Staying on the backs of other great players, you can't forget Babe Ruth's legs. Samuel Bird's middle name was Dewey, and he always went by Sammy his whole life, so Sammy Dewey was an all-around athlete, and when the great Babe Ruth began getting into his older days of swinging a bat, Sammy became well known for trotting out as his pinch runner. Though Babe Ruth's legs was also a professional level golfer. He would become the only human being ever to play in the World Series and the Masters tournament. And he was better at divot digging than dinger dinging too. He won 6 PGA Tour tournaments. He played in just 1 inning in that World Series, subbing out his nicknamesake in the 9th inning at left field. But he finished in the top 5 of back-to-back Masters, beating Ben Hogan by a stroke in 1941. Babe Ruth was so good that just his legs could take down one of the greatest golfers ever. A whole nother genre of nicknames came into existence that just kind of tell us where someone's from, but in a really cool way, like through a descriptive word or two about the guy. Simple enough, but this was not like saying Big LeBron from Ohio. No, these had effort put in. The Goshen schoolmaster was a teacher in a small town in Ohio called Goshen before playing pro ball. The Duke of Tralee was an Irishman who loved to say he was born in Tralee, Ireland. It's somehow even better when you learn he was actually born in Toledo, Ohio. He also introduced shin guards to the sport for catchers to wear and is a Hall of Famer. The history of nicknames is the history of baseball. I mean, have you ever swung a Louisville Slugger baseball bat? Well, then you have unwittingly referred to Pete Browning of the Louisville Eclipse and Louisville Colonels. Pete, whose real name was Lewis Rogers Browning, there's some double nickname stuff going on here, was the first ball player to custom make his own bats, and eventually, after being known as a star hitter, he was nicknamed the Louisville Slugger. A little later, some 17-year-old kid special made a bat for him. Pete bought it off the kid and became the first ever customer of the now named Louisville Slugger brand. Pete was also an alcoholic who played the sport drunk. It took 80 years before fans went back and corrected his gravestone to spell his name correctly, and he was also triple nicknamed the Gladiator, likely because of his aggression with reporters or his inability to catch fly balls. He is a legend of the game. The Wild Horse of the Osage, real name Johnny Martin, was from a Native American tribe called the Osage, and he ran the bases like he was, well, a horse that was wild. Checks out.
Catfish Hunter, Rusty Cunts, Babe Ruth, Poop Johnson, Magic Johnson, Big Dick Nick, the Human Joystick. I didn't write these names. They are all real, I swear to God. I didn't write these names, but it's who they are, so it's what we call them. Chubby Cox, the only Nolan, Dick Cox, Composy, Lil Stoner, Dick Pull, the gay reliever.
How about the Earl of Snohomish? Mr. Howard Averill was from a town in the state of Washington called Snohomish, so like, they probably called him Earl to mean, you know, the noble British title, right? No, his middle name was just Earl. It's what he went by. I guess he is literally the Earl of Snohomish. He was also known as The Rock for his muscular build, and he is the only notable athlete ever with that nickname. An Earl is actually a very similar rank of nobility to a count, so Mr. Sensenderfer can relate. In the 1937 All-Star Game, the Earl hit a line drive that broke the toe of a man named Jay Dean, who was nicknamed Dizzy Dean for his eccentric, chaotic behavior both on and off the field. Dizzy would rush back from the broken toe too quickly, and he had to change his delivery to avoid putting too much pressure on it, which then messed up his arm in a way that it never really came back from. He was only 27 years old when it happened, and he'd already won 133 games in his career to that point. After the broken toe, he would win just 17 more games the entire rest of his career. He still made the Hall of Fame, and later changed his legal first name from Jay to Jerome to honor a childhood friend who passed away and to help that friend's mother with her loss. Good guy, Dizzy. Hilariously, Dizzy Dean's brother, who was also in the majors, also an all-star pitcher on the same team as Dizzy, who won a World Series along his brother, was nicknamed Daffy Dean, for no other reason than to create a cool marketing tag with Dizzy and Daffy Dean. The name had no additional backstory. And his middle name was D, so it's Daffy D. Dean. Baseball. you noble architect of nonsense, what did we do to deserve your treasures? We can get a little more modern in this area. Haven't you heard? It's the Arkansas Hummingbird. Lon Warnicki is eternally cool thanks to his fastball that sizzled and darted across the plate, and being from Arkansas. Wilmer Mizell is already a great birth name for a guy who played in the MLB, then was elected to the House of Representatives. We, the people, made his name better. He hailed from Vinegar Bend, Alabama, but if you've never heard of the place, then Vinegar Bend Mizell will instantly be one of the coolest and weirdest nicknames in world history, not just sports. Al Raboski was born in Oakland. I want to be very clear about that. His father and his last name, however, were of Hungarian descent. He was a pitcher. Sometimes he didn't like the ground, so he'd stomp on it. Sometimes he got mad at his glove, so he'd scream into it. He had a sweet mustache that he admitted he only grew to try and intimidate hitters. That's all I need to hear. The mad Hungarian will live on forever. Here's a video of him getting close to beating up a reporter.
Hey, you ever say what you said that one? Yeah, but if I somebody, I tell them what to say.
That's part of the business.
The beautiful irony of this clip is that the Mad Hungarian is now a longtime commentator himself for the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay, let's get less modern again. How about some PG-13 ones? And by that, I of course mean pretty giggly for a 13-year-old. Who doesn't appreciate a little Dick Cox? His first name was not Richard. No, I don't know where we got Dick from Elmore. I won't hear any excuses from his teammates beyond messing with good old Mr. Cox. Pussy Thibault, anyone? He joins the old woman in the red cap as another emasculating ballplayer name. Charles Alston Thibault has a decent explanation. In the newspaper reporting era, his name would frequently be written out as C.A. Thibault, his first two initials. The abbreviated initials of C.A.T. caused his teammates to have fun with him. Pitchers did not fear Pussy Thibault. They feared having to tell their grandchildren that they gave up a hit to a man who seems like a misprint in history. Composy is pretty solid. It was simply a shortening of the first name Cumberland. Nicknames also may bring heightened athletic versatility, as he is the only person in the Baseball and Basketball Hall of Fame. A legend in the Negro Leagues, he is not related to Gerald Posey in any way, despite that guy's nickname Buster having the word bust in it. I'm having fun. You never go wrong with Russell Kuntz, nicknamed Rusty. Can you put that one together yourself? His last name is technically pronounced Kuntz, it's German, but we can pretend we don't know that. He played for the White Sox, the Twins, and won the '84 World Series with the Tigers. There goes this video's monetization. Make sure you subscribe and maybe even become a member if you like me to help the cause. So I've been watching some baseball recently. Let me ask you guys a question. What do the Detroit Tigers have in common with an old hooker? Rusty Kuntz. I like Lil Stoner. His name was Ulysses, but a younger sibling of his was unable to pronounce that very well and just called him Lil. Fast forward a few generations and now he sounds like a SoundCloud rapper. The gay reliever just seems mean. Calling a good closer with a jolly attitude gay definitely made sense at the time. There was nothing to do with sexuality here, but it has aged rough for poor Joe Page. It seems he tried to make his preferences very clear to the world. I mean, look at how macho he is with these guns. It didn't work. And there's gotta be another joke to be made off the fact that his other nickname was the Fireman, because as a great relief pitcher, he would extinguish opponents' late rallies. Maybe I would imagine the gay reliever to have all the fireman calendars? 4 out of 10. Ugly Johnny Dickshot exists too. Wow, wait, no, we're gonna have to analyze that one. John Oscar Dickshot was his real name, an unfortunate one to say the least. I hope he has living relatives with the surname passed down. You can't even blame the times here. I think Dickshot's always been funny. His father changed the family name from Dixis to Dickshot when Johnny was very young, but adding ugly to the front of that is just adding insult to another insult. He wore it proudly though. The ugly part came from Johnny crowning himself the ugliest man in baseball. A crazy thing to say, cause he looks very normal. Like, don't go calling me the gay YouTuber, but that's a fine-looking man. When he was younger, some older kids were throwing bottles in his backyard, and one hit his skull, knocking ugly Johnny Dickshot unconscious for 3 days. It required a metal plate to be inserted into his head, and this later helped him avoid mandatory military service in World War II. While he was in the minors, a fan once came up to him and asked if Ugly Dickshot would say hi to his wife, because the fan wanted to make himself look more attractive to her. Again, to me, he was a pretty normal-looking guy. It's a nice August day. There's a bit of wind, the sun is shining down brightly. You hit a big infield pop fly. It's the worst nightmare for a second baseman. The year is 1878. Gloves do not exist yet. Fear does. But don't worry, for the man settling underneath it is Bob Death to Flying Things Ferguson. Very possibly the greatest nickname in sports history belongs to a man who would not let anything off the bat get past him. Bob was great proof for the false idea that nicknames are a shortened version of a real name. Clearly, they are not. It's more about making someone's name better, catchier, cooler. His real middle name was also Vavasor. That's kind of cool. There are rumors that Death to Flying Things may have partially derived from his superhuman ability to swat flies in his living room with a near 100% success rate. Okay. But it is much more likely that it came from his first-rate play in the infield, where no ball near him got the privilege of meeting the ground. Another group of people think that the name didn't actually exist at all, and it was retroactively applied years after he retired. I outright refuse to believe this is the case. Mr. Death to Flying Things Ferguson is additionally credited with being the first ever switch hitter in the history of the sport. Baseball is nothing but a tapestry, and its nicknames are the paintbrush that weaves together the picture. Baker, Benson, Bueller, Clark, Davis, Death to Flying Things Ferguson, Death to Flying Things Ferguson, Death to Flying Things Ferguson.
He's sick.
Thank you, Simone. Donaldson, Evans. Arlie Latham got the tag of the freshest man on earth, awesome by the way, because of his personality. The guy loved to play practical jokes, often on his own managers. He would put a clown nose on to stand behind and mimic St. Louis Browns owner Chris Vonderhaar while he spoke to the team. Vonderhaar himself is one of the most fascinating and funniest individuals in baseball history, by the way, and I heavily recommend you check out my Beer and Sports video to learn about his entire life story. But the freshest man on earth once lit a firecracker under third base to wake himself up after complaints that he kept falling asleep on the job. He would somersault while running the bases to avoid tags, and he was an unbelievably awful fielder. He has the MLB record for most career errors by a third baseman at 822. Second place on that list is over 200 errors behind him. No one will ever be colder than Mr. Fresh in the hot corner. Mordecai Brown's middle name was Centennial because he was born in 1876, exactly 100 years after the United States became an independent country. That's pretty cool. He suffered a rough accident as a child on his farm, which mangled his fingers and took most of his right index finger off. Because of this, he was able to develop an unnaturally nasty curveball and became a Hall of Fame pitcher. The man with 4.5 fingers was, of course, nicknamed Three Finger Brown. Wait, what? James Bell, a black man who played in the Negro Leagues, was often considered the fastest person to ever play the sport of baseball. He allegedly ran the bases in 12 seconds. He could steal 2 bases on 1 pitch, and he was able to advance from first to third consistently on bunts. He's in the Hall of Fame. he is known as Cool Papa Bell ever since he struck out fellow Negro League legend Oscar Charleston while in a tight spot one inning, and his manager nicknamed him Cool for his composure, later adding Papa because, well, it just sounded really awesome. Dummy Hoy is there. Haven't we all met a man who is deaf and wanted to nickname him Dummy? At the turn of the century, that was completely okay. William Hoy is the most accomplished deaf player in MLB history. He too changed the game entirely. When he stood on first base, Dummy, real name William, used to have his third base coach give him signs to let him know if the last pitch was a ball or a strike, so he could keep track of the count. This is directly credited with the hand signals that behind-the-plate umpires now use for balls and strikes, rather than just shouting out what it was like they used to. Baseball is a kingdom, and its nicknames are the jesters, telling the sport's saga with equal parts glory and nonsense. Chicken, pickles, buttercup. What do these words mean? They are not a nickname. They are three nicknames. Flip a page. William Van Winkle Wolf, holy shit that's a cool birth name already, was once caught absolutely chowing down on some stewed chicken before a game, in which he then went out and committed multiple errors and forever became Chicken Wolf. While sounding like it's a derogatory name that a pack of wolves gave one of their skittish brothers, it caught on with reporters. But then, at some point, reporters began calling him Jimmy Wolf, a name that has absolutely no explanation in baseball lore. We have no idea where it came from, and that's probably my favorite backstory possible to any nickname. I guess you can just call a guy whatever you want once he's already Chicken Wolf. Pickles Dillhofer requires no explanation as a legendary nickname. Teammates of Sir William Dillhofer understandably took his last name as inspiration for the nickname. I just can't figure out if they took the Dill part, because Dill Pickles, or the Hofer part, because, well, actually I don't know why they would do that. A side note, I know I'm using a lot of baseball cards. I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but I'm really not sorry, because they are so cool. How many different ones there are is amazing. Someone should really make a full video about them. Like, even longer than a video. I want a full, long, like, feature-length documentary that goes way deep into them. Like, too deep. I'm talking deeper than any normal person wants or needs. How about sweet little Buttercup Dickerson? Lewis Dickerson was a smaller guy at 5'6", 140 pounds, which I personally think is a towering, menacing individual of a man, but his teammates disagreed, and possibly in reference to a character from a popular opera at the time, started calling him Sweet Little Buttercup.
To welcome little Buttercup on board.
George Sternweiss just really liked tobacco, and always had a lip of chewing whenever you saw him. Thus, Stuffy Sternweiss became a name that, you know, is there. He died when a train he was on drove straight into the New Jersey Bay. We can only assume that he was chewing tobacco when it happened. I'm impartial to William Keeler, a Baseball Hall of Famer who stood at just 5'4" tall. Even I think that's kinda short. So people started calling him Wee Willie. Still, he was an amazing hitter with a .341 career batting average, including hitting .424 in the 1897 season, the 15th highest of all time. If you wanted to be like Willie, he gave some good advice to one newspaper during his career for how to reach base in the big leagues. Keep your eye clear and hit 'em where they ain't. And thus, Wee Willie Hit 'em Where They Ain't Keeler, one of the longer nicknames of all time, was born. Liddell Titcomb is firmly in the category of having a name so amazing it didn't need touching. The great minds of baseball managed to make it better. Kinda. Maybe. He's known today as Cannonball Titcomb, a play on his pitching ability to strike out any and everyone. Cannonball was a fairly common nickname for pitchers around the time, but here's the thing. This name never appeared in print until decades after his playing career was over. It may have been retroactively applied to the guy like Bob Death to Flying Things Ferguson. Even when Cannonball died, obituaries from media as big as the Associated Press and the Sporting News referred to him as this maybe false nickname. It's been said that teammates of his used to call him Cannonball and it just never really took off with reporters, but there is no proof to this claim. Personally, I don't really need proof. I feel like the name exists for a reason, and not everything in this era was written down, so just because we can't find it today over 100 years later, I don't think should mean that we just say it wasn't real. That seems a little like naive and giving ourselves too much credit for finding stuff. For all the times you and your buddies have chopped it up about old Cannonball Titcomb, you may have been misnomering a dead man. What's wrong with you? William Veach wasn't even the reason for his own nickname. In the 1884 season, yep, you know the one, when the Providence Grays beat the New York Metropolitans in the World Championship Series, there was this third rival league in pro baseball. The Kansas City Cowboys of the Union Association had a new strategy that their manager was implementing. They would use timing plays with hand signals from all around the field to help the pitcher pick off runners from first base. Pitcher William Veach then spent so much of the year darting his head and eyes all over the field for these signals that players across the league began calling him Peekaboo Veach. His true skills in the sport of peekaboo remain unknown to this very day. Leon Gosselin was a left fielder who was unable to track down fly balls, which some may consider to be an important trait to have for a left fielder. To make up for it, he had a great arm and led the league twice in outfield assists. When running around the outfield chasing balls that got by him, he would throw his arms up in the air and sprint like the inflatable guy outside car dealerships. His teammates thought he looked like a goose. Goose Gosselin it is. He played into it. His most famous picture is this one, with himself holding a goose. But then, one day in spring training before the 1928 season, he saw a high school track team working out nearby. He went over and started challenging the sprinters to races. He saw the shot putters and decided to challenge them to a throwing contest. He spent the next 30 minutes throwing 16-pound shot puts as if they were baseballs. The next morning, his arm was so badly hurt that he couldn't comb his own hair. His shoulder turned a purplish green color and stayed that way for weeks, even through the start of the season. It wasn't broken, but his collarbone was completely out of socket, and despite trying to get it fixed, it was never the same. The throwing arm that was the only reason he could be semi-competent as an outfielder was thrashed for the rest of his career. He still played another 10 years because of his elite hitting, including a career-high .379 average that very 1928 season. He still made the Hall of Fame. His teams would just try their best to hide him in left field, and infielders would have to sprint all the way out into left to help Goose relay the ball in. And remember, he was terrible at catching pop flies, so that was pretty much any time the ball was hit there. How about Mysterious Walker? Fred Mitchell Walker pitched in the minor leagues for most of his career. Seen as a top prospect, he would sometimes use a fake name to avoid attention and scrutiny, which wasn't uncommon. Newspapers, struggling to verify his identity, nicknamed him Mysterious. Allegedly, Mysterious Walker would sometimes even pitch while wearing a mask so people couldn't know who he was. A couple years before that, the multi-sport athlete had also coached the Utah Agricultural School football team. In 1908, his squad was dominant, starting off 4-0 and winning all their games by more than 20 points, and allowing just 6 total points, though a couple of their games were played against some subpar competition like literal high schools. They then dropped 2 games in a row, then had a player die on the field, so the college completely canceled the sport of football entirely at the school, and the team folded mid-season. They brought back the football team the next year and still exist today as the Utah State Aggies. The history hidden behind nicknames is frighteningly outrageous. It is as if they are the names of Victorian poets who also wrestle bears in their spare time. But old school baseball simply set the stage for the rest of the athletics world to explode and join the moniker madness. Nicknames quickly became a staple of every sport on the planet. Every time a new one would start getting popular, nicknames were sure to be there. Some folks, the very best of the best in terms of this video, have earned a nickname that became so synonymous with who they are that we now recognize them more by that than by their real name. Welcome to Chapter 2. Everett High School in Michigan was more of a football school than anything else. In the year of 1974, they were picked to finish dead last in their conference in basketball. When they shot out to a 7-0 start behind a sophomore phenom leading the way, everyone was shocked. The kid was nicknamed Junebug. It came from his childhood days as a chubby little guy who played basketball all day long. There goes that crazy Junebug, hooping again. He always hated the nickname. Everett's 8th game of the season was against Parkside, the preseason favorite to win the conference. It was never close. Everett walked to a 24-7 lead in just 8 minutes. They won the game 80-61. That sophomore sensation, Junebug, whose last name was Johnson, would later comment that he had played, quote, pretty good in the game. He scored a career high of 36 points. He grabbed 18 rebounds. He dished out 18 assists. Junebug Johnson was responsible for 72 of his team's 80 points. After the monstrous triple-double, one newspaper reporter approached him and said he wanted to give the kid a new, better nickname. Junebug wasn't gonna stick. It wasn't catchy, and the kid didn't like it after all. Going off of Johnson, well, Dr. J was already taken by superstar Julius Ervin. Funny enough, the kid's first name was Irvin, but the big E was already being used up by future Hall of Famer Elvin Hayes. The newspaper's sports reporter had to come up with a new one. He chose to highlight the amazing all-around play with it. 36 points was impressive, but being able to do every other aspect of the sport all by himself, this kid looked magic out there on the basketball court. The next day, in the Lansing State Journal, the name Magic Johnson was put into print for the first time ever. The kid liked this one, and this one could stick. Magic Johnson may very well be the most famous and greatest nickname in all of sports history. Magic is an all-time great basketball player. Irvin is like an accountant down the street. I don't know. The only name that really rivals it in terms of scale and legendariness is Babe Ruth. As a youngster, George Herman Ruth was pretty much abandoned by his family, who turned him over to a reformatory orphanage at just 7 years old. As he grew up, the boy began to display extraordinary raw talent in the sport of baseball. One man, the owner of the Baltimore Orioles, a minor league baseball team, Jack Dunn, had recognized his potential. But to be able to sign Ruth to his first contract, Jack Dunn had to legally adopt Ruth and become his legal guardian, as he was only 17, to get him out of the orphanage. His new teammates on the Orioles quickly began joking that he was Dunn's new baby, which over time was shortened to just Babe. Babe Ruth has since become one of the most recognizable names, period, in all of sports history, and it's only a nickname. Babe was already a popular nickname in the era for baseball players. There were a number of them floating around. There's also the candy bar story. Officially speaking, the famous Baby Ruth chocolate bar was named after President Grover Cleveland's daughter, Ruth Cleveland, who the United States press had affectionately nicknamed Baby Ruth. However, this would have been an odd choice for a candy bar namesake. The Baby Ruth bar came out in 1921. Grover Cleveland stopped being president in 1897. His beloved daughter, Ruth, tragically passed away at just 12 years old in 1904, 17 years before the candy bar first released. On the other side, Babe Ruth was exploding as a baseball superstar right at the time the candy bar was coming out. He hit 54 home runs the year before, obliterating the single season record, which was already his at 29. He had blown up as the face of the sport, the most famous man in baseball, pushing it into the American people. The candy company never officially admitted that they named it after the Babe himself. They always stuck true to that story that it was the former president's little baby daughter who was their inspiration. However, most people agree that they did this to avoid having to pay Babe royalties for using his name, and that it was a savvy marketing trick to capitalize on Babe Ruth's popularity while also not having to pay him. Babe tried suing them for clearly using his name, but he lost. A few years later, in 1926, Babe Ruth released his own candy bar called Ruth's Home Run Candy, and the company that made Baby Ruth eventually sued him for copyright infringement, and because the world is backwards, they won, and Babe's candy bar had to be taken off the shelves. Crazy stuff. But there's plenty of others that we know by their nicknames better than their actual names. Even some heavy baseball fans are still surprised to hear that Yogi Berra's real name is not Yogi. It was undoubtedly a big upgrade from Lawrence Berra. It came during his teenage years from a friend who thought that the cross-legged style he sat in during and after baseball games looked like someone doing yoga, also known as a yogi. It was a little over a decade after his MLB debut, when he was already a household name, that Hanna-Barbera debuted their cartoon bear character, Yogi Bear. Similar to the whole baby Babe Ruth connection, Hanna-Barbera never officially admitted that they named the pick-a-nick basket-stealing bear after the Yankees star catcher to avoid legal defamation issues. Yogi did consider suing a cartoon bear and even started paperwork to do so, which would have been a hilarious out-of-context story, but he eventually backed out of the lawsuit. We can even get real recent in this category. Did you know that Idris Femi Adebayo scored 83 points in a basketball game? Bam is simply a nickname that was given to the Miami Heat big man when he was just around 1 year old. While watching the Flintstones, he knocked over a coffee table and sent a whole spread crashing to the ground. It happened while he was trying to mimic the little Stone Age boy Bam Bam Rubble. His mother nicknamed him Bam Bam, and it stuck for a while, eventually being shortened to just Bam. Sauce Gardner was given his nickname by a youth football coach. Originally, it was the much less catchy A1 Sauce Sweet Feet Gardner, but upon exploding as a college football star, Sauce became the name used on every single social media site for the cornerback. It simply implies his cool, confident style of play and personality. You know, that's so saucy, bro. It's 2015 as hell. Lafayette Lever just shortened up to a simple Fat Lever after his younger brother was unable to say his name right. You can feel free to pronounce it as Fat Lever and act like you didn't know, I won't tell, because that's funny. An early triple-double machine who still ranks 13 all-time with 43 of them in his career, his nickname was as far off from his play style as possible. Fat is the only player in NBA history to average 14 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals over his entire career.
The mailman, the answer, the big hurt, fat liver, muscle hamster, Megatron, ugly dick shot. I didn't write these names. They are all real, I swear to God.
I think Drake May counts in this category. This specifically unique nickname is known by the exact same amount of people who know his real name, even if they don't realize it. Drake May. It is meaningless, pointless, and has no real substance to it. Let's analyze the fuck out of it. Now, right when May started playing decently to start his career, people nicknamed the new Patriots quarterback Drake Tom Brady May. Eventually, as he just kept excelling more and more, Pats fans came to the conclusion that he was now good enough to have his own nickname, not just be attached to Brady, and thus birthed Drake May May. The style of name goes back even further, though. In 2018, Macaulay Culkin held a poll on his own website that allowed fans to vote for what he was going to change his legal middle name to, because he didn't like his. Despite some great finalists, including Shark Week, The McRib is Back, Publicity Stunt, and my personal favorite, Kieran, which is his brother's name and was submitted by his brother, the ultimate winner was Macaulay Culkin, and today, the former Home Alone star's legal full name is Macaulay Culkin. There was even an earlier athlete that I was able to track down who got the same treatment, that being former Miami Heat shooter Mike Miller, particularly popping up after he had a big three-pointer in the 2013 NBA Finals while wearing just one shoe on his foot. You could also then call the guy a shooter. The greatest commentator in all of college football right now, a hill I will die on, is Gus Johnson. The announcer who most people either love or hate crowned one NFL player with a nickname that is now so widely used that it's hard to believe it wasn't given until college. When Oklahoma was taking on Kansas State in 2017, sophomore Marquise Brown continued to pop onto the scene with 6 catches for 126 yards. He wasn't an elite player yet, so while announcing the game, Gus Johnson didn't have a ton of information ready to go on it. He did have his hometown of Hollywood, Florida written down. Gus just started repeatedly calling the guy Hollywood, and to say the nickname caught on is an understatement. His ESPN profile is now literally just Hollywood Brown. It is pretty much all he is referred to as nowadays. God bless Gus Johnson. In his younger years, Tyshawn Raekwon Samuel was a mischievous little kid, so his father nicknamed him Debo, after the notorious neighborhood bully in the classic movie Friday. Cadillac Williams got his from a high school sportscaster who compared his quick, smooth running style to that of a sports car. I'll take Cadillac over Carnell Williams any day. The Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the world's first ever artificial satellite, in 1957. 92 days later, it re-entered Earth's atmosphere, burning up quickly upon coming back. 6 years after that, a baby was born, and a complete stranger told his parents that his head looked weird, kind of like the famous satellite. I would personally be upset if someone commented on my newborn baby like that, but little Anthony Webb was then nicknamed Sputnik, a name that was eventually shortened to just Spud. Surprisingly, having nothing to do with his famously short size, Spud Webb would make the NBA, and standing at just 5'7", would defeat his teammate Dominique Wilkins in a dunk contest, becoming the shortest person to ever win the competition in league history. Nate Archibald added to the short person nicknames, though his similarly came from a different place entirely. His father was nicknamed Big Tiny his whole life, and it got passed down to the boy at a young age. He was listed at 6'1" through his career, but was likely one of many NBA players to lie about their height, with many accounts saying 5'10" is a more accurate measure for the Hall of Famer. Tiny Archibald weighed just 150 pounds, but it didn't stop the guy from averaging 34 points and 11 assists one year, or winning a championship with the Celtics later in his career. Every good person can appreciate the song Night Train by Jimmy Forrest, but no one, including maybe Forrest himself, has it more attached to their identity than one of the greatest cornerbacks in NFL history, Richard Lane. He got the classic easy nickname of Dick early on in life, but during his rookie season in the NFL, in his first training camp with the Los Angeles Rams, teammates caught him continuously dancing to the great tune, and Night Train Lane became immortalized as one of the greatest nicknames in history. He still holds the record for most interceptions in a single season ever at 14, a mark which he set that rookie season in just 12 total games. He did all this after being abandoned in a literal dumpster as a 3-month-old infant and only surviving because a woman found and adopted him. Charles Green is a classic case of nicknameception. His aunt started calling him Joe because she thought he looked like the longtime world heavyweight champion boxer Joe Louis. Louis, by the way, also has an awesome nickname of the Brown Bomber. Joe Green, however, started playing football, and he got pretty good at it, playing on the North Texas football team. His first year there, the squad, specifically the defense on which Joe Green shined as a nose tackle, earned the nickname Mean Green. Understandably, people then started calling Joe Mean Joe Green, an easy to put together nickname that would stick and shine for the rest of his career, an illustrious one that saw him win 4 Super Bowls, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and easily make the Hall of Fame. A few years after he left North Texas, the school would officially adopt Mean Green as their football team name, which later became the name for all athletic teams in the university, and still stands today. Mean Joe's impact on the school is as much as almost any single athlete's impact on their school ever. Funny enough, Mean Joe never really liked his nickname through much of his playing career. He wanted to be remembered more for his amazing successes in the NFL. But I mean, it got far too big for him to stop. And it fits. Here he is kicking a Cleveland Browns player in the nuts, then taking on the entire team in a great old school brawl. The nickname also gave us possibly the greatest athlete commercial in sports history.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good, makes me feel nice year-round. That's the way it should be. I like to see the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and thanks, Mean Joe. Smile.
Jim Hunter's nickname is awesome for the fact that it was completely and intentionally made up with no real true backstory to it at all, because his team's owner knew how awesome it sounded. As a rookie pitcher on the Kansas City Athletics, owner Charles Finley, nicknamed Charlie O, was all about making his team flashier, more exciting, and easier to market. Charlie O created a whole childhood story out of thin air for his new pitcher, that when Jim Hunter was 6 years old, he wandered away from his family, and while they were looking for him in a panic, they found him fishing with 2 catfish that he already caught laying to the side and in midst of reeling in a third. It had zero truth to it whatsoever, but Charlie O told Hunter to repeat the story back to him, and then to repeat it to every member of the baseball media who would listen. He artificially manufactured his young star pitcher the nickname of Catfish Hunter. The kid would go on to become a man, and in doing so lived up to it, winning a Cy Young, 5 World Series, and making the Hall of Fame. Harold Reese was a smaller guy. That's not why he was called Pee-wee at all. The man who would one day be immortalized for putting his arm around his teammate Jackie Robinson in front of a heckling, racist crowd before a game, got his nickname as a youngster in a much cooler sport than baseball. The game of marbles is an unforgiving and ultra-competitive space. The boy, Harold Reese, showed great potential in this battleground. He won runner-up in a marble competition out of Louisville. A small marble is also known as a Pee-wee, and so Pee-wee Reese was etched in stone. Tragically, Pee-wee would eventually choose baseball over marbles, and I guess it worked out. He's in the Hall of Fame and whatnot. Cool, I guess, but this is a kid who had all-time marble potential, and it's tough to think he didn't throw it away. Chapter 2 comes to an end. Guys who are known by their nickname more than they are by whatever is written on their birth certificate are awesome. There's more of them out there. But there's also dudes who go a little overboard. Chapter 3 introduces us to guys with a ton of well-known nicknames. The headliner here is, and always will be, the great Daryl Dawkins. If you pull up this gentleman's page on Basketball Reference, who, by the way, could be described as the very opposite of a gentle man, there are 19 different nicknames listed. The best and most well-known out of all of them was gifted to him by Stevie Wonder, which is indeed not a nickname for Stephen Wonderful. The famously blind R&B musician used to love sitting courtside at basketball games, and he would have someone sitting next to him describing the action as it happened. One game, while being in the presence of a second-year Daryl Dawkins throw down some athletically astonishing dunks, Stevie's friend just kept saying, "Hey, the big chocolate guy just threw down another thunder dunk." Stevie, because he can and you can't, walked over into the 76ers locker room after the game. He asked where the guy who kept throwing down the dunks was. On a basketball team that Julius Erving, with the all-time nickname of Dr. J, played on, everyone in the room pointed to Daryl Dawkins. Stevie shuffled on over there, put his hand on Dawkins' shoulder, and said 2 words: "Chocolate Thunder." A man who never actually saw the guy play was the one to bestow one of basketball's best nicknames of all time. Chocolate Thunder made a personality out of nicknames on top of this great one. There was Double D, Doc, Dr. Dunk, how about Sir Slam, Candy Slam, Dunk You Very Much, but he also took it a step further. A revolutionary high flyer, Daryl Dawkins also liked to nickname all of his unique dunks. Keep in mind, this guy is the reason we have breakaway rims in basketball, which are much tougher to tear down. In the 1979 season, he destroyed a backboard, becoming one of the earliest people to ever bring a hoop down. He nicknamed the dunk that accomplished that feat, and I am quoting directly, "The chocolate thunder flying, Robinson crying, teeth shaking, glass breaking, rump roasting, bun toasting, wham bam, glass breaker, I am jam." A couple weeks later, he pulled it out again and tore down another backboard, making the league realize that breakaway rims were gonna be needed. He called his coast-to-coast dunks the Greyhound Special. There was the Gorilla, the In-Your-Face Disgrace, the Spine Chiller Supreme, and of course, the Yo Mama. Dawkins was really just an outlandish guy, the best type of personality for the league to have. He would claim that he spent his off-seasons back on his home planet of Lovetron, where he spent his time practicing interplanetary funkmanship with his girlfriend Juicy Lucy. Oh yeah, I also didn't finish up with all the nicknames he's known by. Zandokin the Mad Dunker, likely one acquired on his home planet of Lovetron if I had to guess. The Master of Disaster, Squawkin' Dawkin', Pure Pleasure, Cool Breeze, the Demon of Destin, Double D Dunk, Dr. Jam, and okay, I think our bases are about all covered. Joe Montana has some of the best nicknames, and one great one that I bet you haven't heard of. There was Joe Cool, of course, and the Comeback Kid for both his calm and relaxed demeanor in even the biggest of moments. Golden Joe came out of his California-related success close to some famous big bridge in San Francisco. But my favorite of his came from a newspaper contest that the San Francisco Chronicle put on as Joe and the 49ers were really popping onto the pro football scene. There were some decent options thrown around from local fans. The Frisco Kid, Sky King, Big Sky, a reference to the state of Montana, but the one that really captured people's hearts was a letter saying, "Joe Montana already sounds cool enough to be a nickname. What our quarterback needs is a real white guy name. I say we start calling him David W. Gibson." The fan who submitted this idea was named David W. Gibson. A nameplate was created, and a couple days later, Montana found it placed above his personal locker at the Niners field, and he kept it there for a long while. The man who went 4-0 in Super Bowls, David W. Gibson himself. Charles Barkley has what I truly consider to be maybe the coolest and most underrated nickname of all time. The round mound of rebound is just something that it doesn't feel like people are able to come up with anymore. It's not even complex, it really just means fat and board grabbing. There's also the Leaning Tower of Pizza, that one just means fat. Sir Charles is more a title of respect, which was hard earned through the undersized power forward at just 6'6" tall, still being able to bruise and battle with guys 6 inches taller than himself. There's the incredible bulk, we're back to just fat now, the wide load from Leeds, a reference like some of those old baseball ones to Chuck's hometown in Alabama, as well as his, well, fatness again. And there's Good Time Blimp. Yeah, reading through all of these at once, I really start to understand why Charles was mad enough at the world to spend his entire broadcasting career taking it out on all women in San Antonio for being large gals.
What hatchet are you talking about buried in San Antonio?
Because, these like, them old big old women sucked all the air out of the arena and had it hot in there.
Yeah, there it is.
Like Shaq wanted me to talk about all them big old women in San Antonio. Oh, they got some big ones down there. They eat them churros like this. I'm telling you, they be eating them churros. I want to apologize to the women of San Antonio. Because, Ernie...
What happened? What happened to prompt this? This has been going on for a good 12 years.
I had churros last night. I see what all the excitement is about.
Larry Bird fits too. Most famously known as Larry Legend, there's a few other gold ones following him. Kodak referenced his photographic memory on the basketball court. The Great White Hope was obviously for his domination in a league that was already about 70% African American in his first few years in the NBA. But I would say the best one is the Hick from French Lick. I know the formula is easy, he came from Little French Lick, Indiana, but some of these just work so well, I like them. As most all-time greats, LeBron James has racked up his share of different nicknames. Drafted into the league first overall to his hometown Cavaliers, he was instantly dubbed the Savior. Even before that, he was known as the Chosen One through his high school playing days. And the guy managed to live up to both of these. King James came upon when he began living up to them. His signature tomahawk dunk lent him to the Akron Hammer, another hometown shout. Braun is too easy to count, but Braun works well. Then TikTok came along and his name basically became a nickname vessel. You just have to put lay in front of literally any word or phrase and it will pass. Lay goat, lay Mickey Mouse, lay bum, lay brick. They were kinda almost all hating on him for a while, but Captain Lamerica is solid. I don't feel like I can really explain why You Are My Sunshine is a nickname for him. The best I can give you is showing you this video.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
Yeah, I know that didn't really help. Just let it happen. We have no control. The guy is a meme. I mean, you can say his name in a weird voice and get a nostalgic response by this point.
LeBron James.
Kevin Durant has some awesome ones and some not awesome ones too. Early in his career, he was crowned with the Slim Reaper for his skinny, lengthy frame and elite deadly scoring game. Durantula came about for very similar reasons, long arms and such, but in 2014, Kevin Durant openly voiced his disdain for both of these nicknames. In an interview with Bill Simmons, he attempted to give himself a nickname. Usually a bad idea, you should let the people do it for you. I say that because he came up with the Servant for people to start calling him, because he serves everything up for NBA fans, I guess? This one was universally laughed at. Some people thought it was a weird, sarcastic joke towards LeBron's nickname of King James at the height of their rivalry, while others pointed out these certain connotations that it carried, calling a black man the servant. Just weeks later, Durant himself, always listening to social media chatter, admitted that it was not a great one and that maybe people should just stick with KD, his initials. It does seem like he's always liked Easy Money Sniper, that's his longtime social media handle on Instagram and Twitter. However, just a couple years ago, he did come out and say that the Slim Reaper had officially grown on him, and he no longer hated it. An ever-changing man. Cameron Chancellor was one of the hardest hitting safeties of the last couple decades in the NFL. He normally went by Cam Chancellor. Bam Bam Cam would be thrown around for the hits. Same with Soul Taker and Cam Track for ball hawking. Though I would be most receptive to the Legion of Boom era shutdown passing defense nickname of Cam Chancellor, the touchdown canceller. That is awesome. Derek Jeter has a pair of classic nicknames that are tough to top. Being the captain of the New York Yankees is one of the most coveted roles in all of sports. There have only been 16 of them in the team's 123-year history. They don't always name a captain, it only happens when someone rises to the ability of deserving it. Wee Willie Hit 'em Where They Ain't Keeler was bestowed with the honor, and shockingly Babe Ruth had it for just 6 days before he was ejected from a game, threw dirt on the umpire, then ran into the stands to attack a fan. Classic old baseball. But after Lou Gehrig, nicknamed the Iron Horse for his 2,000 plus games played in a row, a record at the time, passed away in 1941 from a disease that then became nicknamed Lou Gehrig's disease, the Yankees announced that they would never name another captain, and they held true to it for 37 years, until Thurman Munson finally took the patch in '76. A few captains later, Derek Jeter got the title in 2003 and held it for 11 seasons until his own retirement, the longest tenured captain in Yankee history, earning him the eternal simple nickname of the Captain. But a couple years before being graced with that opportunity, Derek Jeter hit a walk-off home run in a World Series game. The game was on Halloween, October 31st, and with a late night start, the clock turned over to midnight just minutes before Jeter called game. This earned him the enduring nickname of Mr. November, a play on Reggie Jackson's just as legendary Mr. October, given for his consistent stellar play in World Series games. Both Jackson and Jeter won 5 World Series rings each, cementing themselves as worthy candidates for the namesakes of months in baseball. Giannis Antetokounmpo is proof to me that no matter how crazy a name you have, if you are good enough, you can make people learn how to say it correctly. There is no worthy excuse. But nicknames still help us with guys like this. Early in his career, the man who took a little while to really start dominating in the NBA did make announcers and fans struggle. For this short time, he got the nickname of the Alphabet, because you had a better chance at pronouncing that. And here's a cool stat, his last name contains 38% of the entire alphabet. Control-C, Control-V was scarcely used for the same hard-to-spell reason. Once his physical outlandishness began to really be noticed, the Greek Freak caught on as another great option for us. Another rhyme or alliteration from someone's hometown or home country, it works. It was made even better when he played into it, calling himself a freak in the sheets a couple years back, which just sounds way better if you read it in Giannis's accent.
He could be a freak on the court and on the shits, you know what I'm saying?
In more recent years, Grease Lightning has gotten some attention, particularly when the guy started making a habit out of taking one dribble from half court into dunking the ball. Shaquille O'Neal may be the king of self-appointed nicknames. I know I said you shouldn't do it, and that's true, but when you are big, dominant, and scary, no one's going to question you on it. He crowned himself the Big Diesel, pretty self-explanatory. Then came the Big Aristotle, which he justified by using a quote from the famous Greek philosopher, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." Shaq Fu was a notoriously awful kung fu fighting game starring Shaq himself, which people then started calling him jokingly to poke fun at the massive flop. Then there's a barrage of others: Osama bin Shaq, Manny Pacquiao, Wilt Chamberlain, the Big Deporter, and of course Hobo Master, reflecting his roots of growing up poor only to become a master of his craft and rich superstar. I guess Shaq is the master of hobos, according to the man himself. Gilbert Arenas has some cool ones. Agent Zero was a reference to his jersey number mixed with his killer secret agent type of mentality and scoring ability. The hibachi came from his tendency to catch absolute fire when he got hot. His scoring really isn't properly appreciated. He dropped 29 and 28 points per game in back-to-back seasons during his short prime, beating out D. Wade, aka Flash, Dirk Nowitzki, or the German Wunderkind, Paul Pierce, The Truth, and Carmelo Anthony, the real Melo himself, or Hoodie Melo if you really know what you're talking about. Some will also call Gilbert Arenas simply Shooter, which, well, that one has nothing to do with basketball or scoring or even shooting abilities. He once brought 4 guns into the Washington Wizards locker room and placed them in front of teammate Javaris Crittenton with a note reading, "Pick one," after the two got into a fight about a card game. This incident spawned a lot of punishments for Arenas, including a 50-game suspension that directly led to that shorter prime I mentioned. It pretty much ended the domination days of his career. And the guy is still getting into card game related troubles 20 years later. In 2025, he was arrested and charged with federal crimes for allegedly running a high stakes poker ring. Vince Carter pretty much had all of his alter egos stem from his superhuman dunking ability. Half man, half amazing is a personal favorite across sports for me. Air Canada is fitting for the Toronto Raptor legend, where he got to sport one of the coolest jerseys of all time. Vinsanity is an unfortunate one. Jeremy Lin kinda superseded him to modern fans with the classic Linsanity, but both fit well. And that's our group of overly nicknamed guys. There is a very small, selective, elite collection of dudes that belong to Chapter 4. This is people who were nicknamed so well that not only did they become more known by their nickname, but they actually changed their legal name to it. There's not a lot of these all-in legends out there. Chad Johnson just made things confusing for all of us. You look at that name and think, how can he not be the palest, boringest white guy on the planet? But Big Chad is actually one of the most exciting, funniest, most interesting players of our time, who really helped spark the revolution of the way fans and athletes could interact on social media. And he's not white. Johnson is a Bengals legend, leading the franchise in receptions, yards, and touchdowns all time. He's a celebration legend, with a couple of his classics being a fake proposal to a Bengals cheerleader, putting on a Hall of Fame jacket during a game, and taking control of one of the television cameras on the field. And of course, he's a nickname legend. The man who wore number 85 went by the classic Ocho Cinco. It is indeed not 85 in Spanish. That would be 85. This just means 8-5. In 2008, the 7-year NFL veteran officially changed his name to Chad Ochocinco, with the Bengals even letting him wear the name on the back of his jersey. 4 years later, when he was moving on over to Miami to be a Dolphin, he decided to change his name back to Chad Johnson in an effort to reconnect with his former self, right after he got married to one of the ladies from the show Basketball Wives. He legally remains Chad Johnson to this day. Ron Artest is one of the most infamous crazy head players in NBA history. His rookie year, in 1999, he applied for a part-time job at Circuit City, listing his former job as NBA player and his reference as Chicago Bulls president Jerry Krause. He admitted that during his 3-season run with the Bulls to start his career, he would consistently drink Hennessy at halftime of games. In 2004, with the Pacers, he showed up to one practice in a bathrobe in an effort to stay relaxed. Later that season, he was suspended for 2 games because he asked his head coach for a month off from the team because he was really tired from promoting an R&B album that he helped produce. In 2006, now with the Kings, he offered to give his entire salary to a teammate, hoping to show camaraderie and help build for the future. He didn't go through with it. Through his entire career, he had some interesting hairstyles that he would rock. In 2008, still on the Kings, the Lakers and Celtics played in the finals, with Boston winning the series in 6 games. After Game 6, Kobe Bryant, aka the Black Mamba, was in the locker room showering when a man walked in. It was Ron Artest. He told Kobe that he could help him win a championship, that he wanted to help. Again, Ron Artest was on the Kings. Kobe Bryant was never able to figure out how Artest got into the locker room. In 2009, he did actually join the Lakers and chose number 37 to honor Michael Jackson, because Michael's album Thriller spent 37 straight weeks at the top of the charts. In 2010, he was a man of his word and did help Kobe get that ring, and after winning Game 7 of the finals against the Celtics, he gave one of the funniest post-game press conference interviews ever.
I got Wheaties! I got Wheatie box! Get my Wheatie box! I got Wheaties! You don't seem excited! I'm leaving! Y'all don't seem excited. I'm all excited. I feel like the oddball.
First question on the right.
Right here to you, right? My kids here yet? Not yet? They must not want to shine. Come on. All right, here's the question.
On the right.
I'll be here all day. Well, not all day, because I do want to go to the club, so I'll stay for a while. We'll have some fun.
Mark will cut us off at some
Hey,
point.
people over there on your laptops.
Hey! In the off-season celebration, he appeared on The Tonight Show in just his underwear and no shirt. Then, there was the big one. In the middle of this chaotic career, in 2004, he was the catalyst in the worst fight in NBA history, the Malice at the Palace. Ron Artest, among other players, ran into the stands and began fighting with fans. He laid one great haymaker on a guy who he thought threw a beer on him, though it turned out to be the wrong guy. Artest received the worst punishment of the whole bunch, and the worst in NBA history for an on-court incident, being suspended for 86 games over a full season. So, in 2011, naturally, this guy, with all of these awesome stories in his basketball life, changed his name to Meta World Peace. It wasn't really a nickname before then at all, but it became his legal name, so we called him it. But then, 3 years later, he changed it again. His actual name became The Panda's Friend, including the word the. He did this while playing a season in the Chinese Basketball Association. Then, in 2020, he changed it to Meta Sandiford Artest, merging his birth name with his second name and his wife's name, which still is his legal name today. The guy is a character. John Paul Bonser did have a real nickname. The MLB pitcher was called Boof at a very young age by his mother. He never cared to ask what it meant or why she called him it, possibly out of fear for the truth. Boof Bonser was only in the majors for a few years, but it was before that, after he was drafted and was working his way up through the minor leagues, that he legally changed his name to Boof Bonser. His manager on the Twins would later comment that he was an absolute bulldog if a guy named Boof can be a bulldog. He was also part of one of the worst trades in MLB history. I personally was emotionally distraught when I learned the Oakland A's legend, Coco Crisp, was not born with that tasty sounding name. Cavelli Crisp was taunted as a young boy by his own sister, that's normally how it goes, for looking like one of the characters on the Cocoa Krispies cereal box. I struggled to guess which one it was without sounding offensive. In the minor leagues, his whole team one time was filling out questionnaires to get to know each other better, and Mr. Crisp put Coco in the nickname section. His teammates got a real kick out of it, and they were able to get it put up on the scoreboard for their next game when he was batting. It stuck from there and pretty much never left the scoreboard again. By the time he was a 10-year veteran in the MLB, known only by Coco Crisp and no other name, he had his name officially changed to it. The Frenchman, Urbain Chaucour, kinda got forced into changing his name, but it made it better, and it's the only thing people know him by today. A pitcher through the 1920s, newspaper consistently referred to him as the awesome, catchier name that history remembers him by, Urban Shocker. This was wrong, but he eventually got so fed up with them spelling it incorrectly that he just changed his name to Urban Shocker so the papers would be right. He had a heart condition so severe that he was unable to lie down. He would start choking when he tried to, so he had to sleep sitting upright, sometimes strapped to a board or a chair so he wouldn't fall over. After a solid 12-year career with a World Series win in it, he tossed just one game in the 1928 season on May 30th and then contracted pneumonia shortly after. In early September, he was dead, less than 4 months after his final MLB game. Lloyd Bernard Free grew up as an elite basketball player in the neighborhood of Brownsville, Brooklyn. When he was just a teenager, he hit his first 360 dunk. A childhood friend nicknamed him All World for how good the neighborhood thought he was. When Lloyd made the NBA, he began wanting to use his newfound platform for good. Combining his childhood nickname with a message of peace, he changed his name to World Be Free. He kept it there to this very day. Despite his old middle name being Bernard, he claimed that the B stood for just B, nothing else. Deep stuff. World also had a few other solid nicknames, including the Brownsville Bomber, hometown shout, and the Prince of Midair. For our next chapter, I just want to rapid fire some great nicknames that I couldn't really fit into any other section, but still deserve to be mentioned. Maybe my favorite one across all of sports, and I know I've said that a few times, but I really don't know if anything beats this, is Justin Forsett. The former journeyman NFL running back went by the nickname of The Law. Why? Because Justin Forsett doesn't make the law. He just enforce it. Howard Grange, more known as Red Grange, was a revolutionary running back in football's early days, around the 1920s, one of the game's first stars who helped popularize the sport around guys that everyone knew their name, and he was nicknamed the Galloping Ghost for his blinding speed, as well as the Wheaton Iceman for his frozen water delivery job in his hometown of Wheaton, Illinois. The pitch clock in baseball may have first been thought of when watching Mike Hargrove. His long routine at the plate before every at-bat, every pitch, led fans to hilariously call him the human rain delay. Mike Alstott was probably the most fullbacky fullback you've ever seen play football, and rightfully so, he was referred to as the A-Train. He wore number 40, and alongside his backfield partner, halfback Warwick Dunn, the two were known as WD-40. Beautiful. Ryan Fitzpatrick has had some highs and lows in his quarterbacking career through the NFL, which are easily characterized by calling the guy either Fitzmagic or Fitztragic, depending on the phase he's in. You know those little intros the NFL players do with the starting offense and defense on each of their first drives? Yeah, well, Terrell Suggs got first place in those.
Ray Lewis, University of Miami. Jamel McClain, Syracuse University. Cecil, Ball So Hard University.
Marshawn Lynch's angry at other humans type of running style got him the nickname Beast Mode, highlighted by probably his greatest career moment, a dominating run known as the Beast Quake, because the cheers of the fans inside registered the seismic activity of a tiny earthquake. Nick Foles led the Philadelphia Eagles to an unlikely Super Bowl win in 2018, full of gutsy performances along the way, but that is not the only reason why people call him Big Dick Nick. This one has been cooking in NFL lore for a while. Way back in 2014, edge rusher Connor Barwin did an AMA on Reddit where fans can ask him any question and he'll answer. Someone asked him who had the biggest wiener on the Eagles. He answered, "The legend commenced." Sticking with the Eagles, Cooper DeJean and Reed Blankenship are both breakers of barriers by being some of the only white defensive backs in the NFL. It's statistically crazy that they're on the same team, so inspired by the wine sections in grocery stores, this dynamic duo has been nicknamed Exciting Whites. Heavens to Betsy, how splendid is that? Joe Namath had some flamboyant fashion, a big personality, and played under the brightest of lights in New York, so Broadway Joe made sense and sounds cool. William Perry was huge, so he's the fridge, that works out easy. The same logic followed Jerome Bettis for being the bus after a college journalist at his school of Notre Dame wrote that he would take multiple people for a ride when they tried to tackle him. Sandy Koufax is a tough one to beat in terms of magnificence. The pitcher with maybe the most dominant prime ever is known as the left arm of God. Walter Payton ran smoothly, with grace and elegance, and it surprised people to know how nice and caring of a guy he was off the field, earning him the iconic nickname of Sweetness. Dante Hall was one of the best return men of all time, making people miss on both punts and kicks, and earning himself the stylish nicknames of the X Factor and, even better, the Human Joystick. We've had a very recent nickname battle in the sports world between the current and past generation. George Gervin, usually credited with mastering and popularizing the finger roll layup in basketball, is the Iceman, nicknamed so for his composure and ability to rack up points without even breaking a sweat. Caleb Williams, the new young stud quarterback of the Chicago Bears, a sentence that's never really been able to be said truthfully, has already racked up some clutch performances and comebacks in the NFL and college, showing elite composure for a young leader and leading one of his Chicago teammates to nickname him the Iceman. So who's the real one? George Gervin never actually filed a trademark legally on the nickname, so in 2026, Caleb Williams filed for his own. Gervin, realizing his mistake and angry at the youngin for trying to take what has famously been his for decades, filed the same thing. As of the uploading of this video, neither has been approved yet, and the winner of the true Iceman battle is still undecided. Oh yeah, and there's Chuck Liddell. That's all. Hi, Chuck. Deion Sanders is primetime, big plays and big moments. That one's easy to understand. Calvin Johnson is Megatron. He's got the size, strength, speed, and power to resemble the Transformers villain. Doug Martin was in college at Boise State and dating a short little gymnast. Some of his buddies nicknamed Doug's girlfriend Muscle Hamster. When Doug stepped in to defend her, his buddy said, "Look, two little muscle hamsters just running around." The mean name stuck on Martin all the way through his time as an NFL running back, thanks to his 5'9" height. He always hated it because of its origins and made that clear right when he entered the league, pulling at Kevin Durant and suggesting that people call him Duggernaut instead. Hey Siri, can I start going by a new name?
Sure. What would you like me to call you?
Muscle Hamster?
Got it. I will now call you Tussle Scamster.
No, it's Muscle Hamster.
Okay, I will remember you as Russell Camper.
No, Muscle Hamster.
Sure thing. How are you today, Brussels Gramster?
God damn it!
Ouch. Douchebag.
Josh Dobbs wasn't just a quarterback at the University of Tennessee, he also studied aerospace engineering and had an internship at NASA, thus he has become the Pastronaut. He also has no hair, but if I make a joke about that, Will Smith might slap me. Johnny Podesto never actually played a single snap in the NFL. Hailing from Modesto, California, he was a standout athlete at St. Mary's and at College of the Pacific, and he was drafted 10th overall by the Steelers in 1944. But he was already a U.S. Marine, so he didn't play for them. A few years later, he signed with the Bears, but never played for them either, instead choosing to begin a 50-plus year career at the Modesto Tallow Company. He still merits inclusion because his nickname was Presto Podesto from Modesto. Andy Dalton's a ginger and has a solid arm. The red rifle fits perfectly. Larry Johnson literally got tricked into his nickname. Converse signed him on to do a stretch of commercials in the shoe company's prime with the NBA. They pitched a good one. It was going to be him in like a supervillain lab with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird fighting over what to name the new perfect NBA player they just created, Larry or Johnson. He liked the idea, so he agreed to do it. When he actually showed up to the whole production, Larry and Magic were nowhere to be found. Larry Johnson got into his trailer to find a dress, a wig, and a whole old lady costume laying out for him. Converse said they scrapped the original idea and instead ended up using this one, which birthed one of the funniest basketball commercials ever and the immortal nickname of Grandmama.
These are my new shoes from Converse. They're so light and so fast, my grandmama can whoop you in them. Grandmama! Let's go.
Frank Thomas pounded baseballs to the point where both opposing pitchers and the leather felt pain. An announcer crowned him the Big Hurt. Karl Malone, third on the all-time NBA scoring list, put up points over a long amount of time to a level very few players have ever been able to match. He delivered so consistently, it earned him the nickname the Mailman. There were questions in the NBA in the late 90s to early 2000s. Who was gonna take over as the post-MJ face of the league? And could anyone on the planet make the Philadelphia 76ers a decent franchise again? Allen Iverson provided some answers to these questions and thus was appointed the answer. Donald Trump had a subreddit devoted to him called The Donald, where his fans would create jokes and memes in support of him. I say had because it was banned from the social media site after repeatedly breaking rules and having a history of inciting violence. Where could I possibly be going with this? Well, a parody of it was created called The Darnold, where the same thing would happen, minus the banned part and violence part, I think, in support of NFL quarterback Sam Darnold. Their nickname for their savior, Geckbus, Geqbus, took off in popularity, which is an acronym for God Emperor Quarterback of the United States, playing on every president being called POTUS. The movie Moneyball emphasized the importance of baseball players who could get on base, period, no matter how they did it. Kevin Youkilis would have fit there, a man with a penchant for getting to first by drawing walks, thus making him the Greek god of walks. That is intense. Elroy Hirsch, one of the best and most underappreciated wide receivers in NFL history, has plenty of pictures and circus catches that clearly back up his nickname of Crazy Legs. Most baseball fans will agree that the greatest defensive third baseman of the sport's history is Brooks Robinson, who seemed to suck up every ball that came his way. That's how you get called the human vacuum cleaner. Law firms are generally referred to as just the last names of all the partners smushed together in a row. Former NFL running back Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, whose name sounds like four names stacked in a trench coat posing as an adult, was understandably referred to as the law firm. Nigerian-born NFL man Christian Okoye was the Nigerian Nightmare. It's still cool, but these hometown ones are kinda running their course. I'm starting to see why we don't see them as much anymore. Chuck Bednarik was a salesman of ready-mixed concrete in the off-seasons while being an NFL player, in the times where the gig didn't quite pay enough money to live off of alone. Concrete Charlie sounds like a nickname that's going to stick. Mischievous, troublemaking kids used to often be referred to as boogers, especially in the southern United States. John Powell's father nicknamed him Boog from a young age, and Boog Powell happened to make the majors in baseball. Richard Clapp could have taken the easy way out. He'd probably still be in this video if he did. But old Dick Clapp was not a soft guy. He decided to do things the hard way. Stubby was a family name, all the way back to his grandfather. He only had a cup of coffee in Major League Baseball, wasn't there for a schlong time at all, but as soon as he made it, Stubby Clapp was immortalized and inserted into the sport's lore by both his name and one of the funniest looking baseball cards ever. Richard Pohl did indeed take that easy way out, but I'm not upset at him for it. Where would baseball be without Dick Pohl? And I get it, it's obvious, it's repetitive, but when Richard Butkus took the path most traveled, his last name added to the allure and made it all the better. It's even funnier that Dick Butkus is maybe the fiercest, hardest-hitting player in NFL history. John Cox already had the funny in him, but changed the first name to complement it. An overweight baby, his parents called him Chubby, and Chubby Cox's story wasn't even done there. He made the NBA as a solid scorer, only to watch his sister, Pamela Cox, get married and have a baby with another NBA player named Joe Bryant, nicknamed Jelly Bean Bryant. They would name that baby Kobe Bean Bryant, who would grow up into the nickname of the Black Mamba, and few remember his NBA uncle, Chubby Cox. Longtime NFL wideout Andre Rison had a great opportunity, and it only took legendary sportscaster Chris Berman to find it. The Creedence Clearwater Revival song Bad Mood Rison was a great combination. Chris Berman actually deserves an individual shout of his own for his noticeably unique way of crowning tons of different players with nicknames. Like God, he created men, such as Jeff Brown Paper Bagwell, Bernard Innocent Until Proven Gilkey, Daryl Green Eggs and Hamilton, Carlos 1 if by sea, 2 if by land, 3 if by erga, and Scott Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Brocious. You see the pattern, he's a legend in nickname folklore. There are so many more good ones I didn't mention. I don't know how someone gets lucky enough to be named Hashawn Trayshawn Clinton Dix, but his family and friends could never say it right and just started calling him Haha Clinton Dix.
Serious legal challenge he's ever faced. At issue, whether Mr. Clinton had a sexual relationship with a former White House intern, Monica Lewinsky, and whether he conspired with his close friend, Washington Jordan, to convince her.
Andrei Kirilenko brings us back to the best of the best list. The Russian small forward wore the number 47, and AK-47 is in absolute elite territory. His haircut also looks like he stole it off of a medieval blacksmith. Dennis Boyd made the big show, despite, or knowing the baseball greats, maybe because of having a heavy penchant for drinking beer, which caused his teammates to nickname him Oil Can Boyd. This one always shocks me that it's not an 1800s era nickname. It's a great one. Abdurrahman ibn Ramadan Yassin was not easy to learn how to pronounce. Some of his football coaches growing up just started calling him Rock, which is awesomely glorious because Rock Yassin sounds like what Jesus' nickname would be if he was in Metallica. The ABA, an old rival league to the NBA, could be a whole chapter on its own. We touched on Dr. J, the icon-born Julius Erving, and it was also home to the original Iceman and George Gervin. Billy Cunningham was the Kangaroo Kid because he, like seemingly the entire ABA, had cunning jumping and dunking abilities. Travis Grant was the Machine Gun for his quick burst scoring ability. Ted McClain was Hound Dog for his intense defense, and Austin Robbins had red hair and a fiery personality, so he was Red Robbins. Now, let's get back into organized categories. Chapter 6 brings us an interesting topic. You see, in the beginning, there was nothing. Then, billions of years later, in what we know as the late 1800s, there was baseball. Originally, teams did not have names. Most were simply referred to as the city which they were from. Most team names, air quotes, from these very early squads have been retroactively applied, but at the time you would usually just see stuff like the Boston baseball team, or the Boston 11 for football. When what we know as team names started being thrown around unofficially, they were nicknames for a team technically. I'm not going to include those because they're kind of their own thing now. However, multiple teams have had specific nicknames of certain groups throughout certain years of their existence. It sounds kind of confusing, but it makes sense. Follow along with me. They've been going on for a while. The 1906 World Series champion Chicago White Sox were referred to in the papers as the Hitless Wonders due to having the very worst batting average in the American League. But they still made it all the way, and in one of the coolest World Series ever, met their crosstown foes in the Chicago Cubs, who had just set the single-season MLB record for most wins in a season at 116, a record that still stands today, having only been tied once. The Hitless Wonder White Sox used elite pitching to beat the Cubs in 6 games. A fun nickname fact, the Cubs started Mordecai Three Finger Brown at pitcher for 3 of those games, 2 of which he went all 9 innings. 1 year before the NFL even existed, team nicknames were already in football. The 1919 Hammond Bobcats made waves at the time and caught a lot of publicity for spending an insane amount of money on their roster. It was un-American. They're basically just paying to win, giving the best guys more money than anyone else can to make themselves unfairly way better. It was rumored that they spent around $20,000 constructing their roster for the 1919 season alone, and that earned them maybe the first football team nickname, the $20,000 Beauties, usually used mockingly by reporters. The squad also, funny enough, played their home games at Cubs Park, soon to be renamed Wrigley Field. The 1970s Pittsburgh Steelers defense, specifically the defensive line, was known as the Steel Curtain, a unit led by Joe Green, L.C. Greenwood, Ernie Holmes, and Dwight Wright. This group was the engine of the Steelers dynasty that won 4 Super Bowls in a 6-year period. If you had a curtain that was made out of steel, you have to imagine no light or anything at all would get through that thing, so it works. Around that same era, the dominant defensive line of the Minnesota Vikings had the even cooler name of the Purple People Eaters, probably my favorite team nickname in sports history. The Cleveland Browns had 12 of their 16 games decided by 1 possession in the 1980 NFL season, often giving their fans mini heart attacks and earning themselves the label of the Cardiac Kids. They went 9-3 in those games, making the playoffs before losing to the Raiders by 2 points. Today, Browns fans would kill to have those heart attacks back just to feel something. In the 80s, the New York Giants defensive unit was the Big Blue Wrecking Crew, and defense is just easier and more so cooler to nickname than offense, I guess. Then, across the same stadium, the New York Jets defensive line was being called the New York Sack Exchange, which was a fan-submitted nickname in a contest that the Jets started using, and then the media picked up soon after. In 1978, an NFL Films production recapping the Dallas Cowboys' previous season, where they won the Super Bowl, was the first to use a now famous phrase, saying that the faces of Cowboys players were as recognizable as presidents and movie stars, and calling the group America's Team. Their reasoning for this was having noticed that even during road games, the Cowboys always seemed to have a strong amount of supporters present. Roger Staubach was the group's quarterback, who was beloved by much of the country thanks to his naval background. The team, understandably, loved the name and stuck with it, continuing to use America's Team for marketing purposes to this very day, where to everyone else in the league, it's sort of become an ironic or poking fun name due to the team having plenty of hate across the NFL now. Saturday Night Live may have very well culturally peaked in 1991 when the show aired a sketch titled Bill Swirsky's Superfans, featuring fans of the Chicago Bears, or should I say Da Bears. They were all dressed up to look like their hero, Bears head coach Mike Ditka. Every part of it is comedic gold, and it was co-written by Bob Odenkirk. Just remember, if you ever have to choose the winner in a fight between God and Ditka, it's a trick question. Ditka is God. The Bears have also had the everlasting nickname of Monsters of the Midway for a long time. It comes and goes. A few years later, the offenses finally got to join the fun when the St. Louis Rams' high-scoring, high-flying offense caught the everlasting nickname of the greatest show on turf and used it to win a Super Bowl by the length of a football. In the 2010s, the Seattle Seahawks' elite defensive tandem, including Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor the touchdown canceller, Bobby Wagner, aka B-Wags, and Byron Maxwell, became famously known as the Legion of Boom, a play on the DC Comics Legion of Doom supervillain group. The 2017 Jaguars were good somehow, super randomly, making the AFC Championship game behind a defense including Calais Campbell, Miles Jack, Jalen Ramsey, and AJ Bouye. As soon as they won their Week 1 game, where they recorded 10 sacks, including 4 by Calais Campbell, the name Saxonville started to take off among fans. After going 3-13 the year before, they made the 2017 AFC Championship, then dropped right back into mediocrity the next year, going 5-11 and missing the playoffs for the next 4 seasons. It is one of the weirder seasons I can remember seeing. One of the best of all was the New England Patriots tight end room for a few seasons, when it featured the legendary life of the party, Rob Gronkowski, and a guy who had killer potential, Aaron Hernandez. It took half your team to tackle Gronk, and Hernandez could shoot through defenses to catch bullets from Tom Brady all day long. The duo was aptly nicknamed the Boston TE Party. Gronk would become arguably the greatest tight end of all time, but Hernandez's career would die hard and fast.
Now, kids, what you need to remember is that the Boston Tea Party led directly to the American Revolution, which caused over 50,000 deaths. The Boston Tea Party, on the other hand, led to just 2 deaths.
I guess I can throw a basketball one in there, with the early 1980s San Antonio Spurs big men being known as the Bruise Brothers, a reference to the 1980 classic movie Blues Brothers. The team was built on an identity of hustle plays, nose to the grindstone, hard-working, not natural talent, basically the buzzwords you hear people describing any white athletes with. Fans would often show up to the arena for games dressed as Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi's characters from the movie. And team nicknames are fun, but they're not quite as good as bullying. Some players get a name bestowed upon them for nothing but demeaning reasons. Let's get mean. Najee Davenport is just like a literal criminal. His nickname Dump Truck is not the bus type of thing. It has nothing to do with running power or strength or football at all. Just weeks before the University of Miami running back was drafted by the Packers in 2002, he snuck into a girl's dorm room at nearby Barry University. The girl was sound asleep in the middle of the night, but she woke up when she heard some, grunting, tired sounds. Her eyes opened to see Najee Davenport squatting over her laundry hamper and pooping inside of it. He was charged with second-degree burglary and criminal mischief, and later accepted a plea bargain for 100 hours of community service. Right outside the courthouse, after he accepted it, Najee pleaded his innocence, saying he only took the deal to get the incident over with and asking, quote, "Where's the evidence? Where's the manure? I know I didn't do it." There and then, Najee, the dump truck Davenport, was born. Speaking of poop, which is one of the better transition in this channel's history, Corey Johnson never made an official NFL roster. He did play in the Canadian Football League for a few years, so tell me I'm cheating. My response will be Poop Johnson. At the University of Kentucky, his fluctuating weight was a topic of conversation. Any given day, he could step on a scale and read any number between 280 and 300 pounds. When asked about it, he blamed the fact that he usually poops 3 to 6 times a day. The clip went viral, appearing that week on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Poop Johnson was created.
Joe, what you drinking there, man? I'm sipping on a little Poop Johnson. But you? I just cracked the cork on a little pickles dill over. That kind of day.
I think Mark Schlereth got sick of his own story. The longtime NFL offensive lineman got the nickname Stink during his playing days because he would frequently urinate in his pants during games on purpose to avoid having to leave the field and take bathroom breaks. He was not a popular man in the huddle or on the sideline. However, years later, Schlereth himself denied this and claimed that the nickname came from his younger days growing up in Alaska and eating a fish called a stinkhead, and he would tell his teammates those stories, so they started calling him Stink. That is not the reason. The guy intentionally pissed his pants and wants people to forget about it. He wants you to forget about it. I will not let that happen. Michael Thomas set the NFL receptions record in 2019, catching 149 passes in a single year. However, many NFL fans felt that he got his way there by just catching short passes over and over for a couple of yards, rather than displaying a full route tree, leading him to be nicknamed Slant Boy. On that same note, there's Jamal Adams, a 3-time Pro Bowl strong safety who's made a career off of blitzing quarterbacks way more than a normal safety would. His struggles in pass coverage through recent years have led fans to call him Blitz Boy. Backup quarterback Tommy DeVito had his moment in the spotlight for the New York Giants a couple years ago, which caused the world to learn a little about the guy, including the weird fact that he still lives with his parents, despite being an NFL quarterback who was starting games. He spoke about how his favorite meal in the world were chicken cutlets that his mom would make for him, leading the world to call him Tommy Cutlets. Every NFL draft, with the very last pick in the 7th round, one team selects a player who is automatically dubbed that season's Mr. Irrelevant due to their high likelihood of being released and out of the league before the season begins, with many never playing an NFL game in their life. You know it's bad when a stadium gets on this list, but Huntington Bank Field, home of the Cleveland Browns, is colloquially referred to as the Dog Pound. However, also is called more accurately the Factory of Sadness. The Portland Trailblazers teams of the late 90s to the early 2000s had a lot of guys getting into trouble on and off the court, including multiple run-ins with police, leading to the squads being referred to as the Jailblazers. Rudy Gobert, mostly known as the Stifle Tower, a solid nickname, has an even funnier French-related one given to him by the big Aristotle himself, Shaquille O'Neal. Now, Osama bin Shaq is well known to not like or respect Rudy Gobert, like at all. Like, it is a weird grudge of hatred that he holds for a guy who he never played with or against. But none were more insulting than when he referred to Gobert as Baguette Biyombo, which doubles as a random diss towards poor Bismack Biyombo, the namesake of a famous Kendrick Lamar song, I'm like 90% sure.
Hey, I'm the realest nigga after all, bitch. Bitch, sit down.
D'Angelo Russell, the electric, personality-filled journeyman point guard whose veins run cold with ice, is known by D-Lo or D-Loading, but my favorite nickname of his is Snitch. In 2016, when the Lakers were a terrible basketball team without a ton of hope for the future on their roster, they got their chemistry torn apart as well. D'Angelo Russell had recorded a video of his teammate Nick Young, aka Swaggy P, talking about cheating on his fiancée, rapper Iggy Azalea. He posted the video publicly on Instagram and became a pariah to like all of his teammates, being avoided in the locker room by everyone except probably Kobe Bryant, who likely just did not care at all. That's how we got Snitch. Joel Embiid may very well have been injured from the time I started speaking this sentence. The 76ers big man's constant injury woes have led to his hilarious nickname of Web Embiid, a play on the website that makes everyone on the planet feel like a doctor. Anthony Davis has this same type of thing working for him. A gust of wind comes in and he's out for a week, so we call him Data Davis. Okay, that should be enough of being mean. Now let's make fun of people in a different way. I touched on it earlier, but there is an unwritten rule that you do not give yourself a nickname, because if you do, you either live up to it or die trying. Last video, I touched heavily on Paul George, who's gone by PG-13 his whole career, trying to call himself Playoff P, then continuing to disappoint in every postseason after that. We, the people, then appointed him Way Off P, PG-13%, COVID-13, and Pandemic P. The Philadelphia 76ers tanked openly and proudly, harder than maybe any other sports team ever has for multiple years on end. This extreme rebuilding strategy was detested by the NBA league offices, and it didn't really work like they wanted it to, despite picking in the top 3 of the draft for 4 years in a row from 2014 to 17. Only one of those 4 players is still doing anything in the NBA at all anymore. After those down years where it was horrible, painful seasons over and over, the 76ers general manager, Sam Hinkie, coined the phrase "trust the process" to give his fans a glimmer of light at the end of the sadness tunnel. Enter 76ers big man Joel Embiid once again. He is the only one of those 4 picks to still be successful in the league. He became the on-court face of the rebuild and eventually adopted the nickname of the process for himself, epitomizing the 76ers' future. However, it never materialized, or at least it hasn't yet. Sam Hinkie resigned, and the 76ers have not even made the conference finals since 2001. The process is now used mostly sarcastically to bag on Embiid, who's still on the team. Self-nicknaming has worked out more positive for some who were able to back it up. Kobe Bryant calling himself the Black Mamba, inspired by the movie Kill Bill, easily could have been laughable if he didn't go on to perfectly embody the name with every ounce of his being. Interestingly, the nickname likely came at the direction of Nike, who wanted to help rebrand his image and separate his on and off the court personas amidst his felony sexual assault trial. Muhammad Ali did the same thing, proclaiming himself to be the greatest multiple times throughout his career, and then going on to prove himself correct with a good argument as the greatest boxer of all time. To end off the video, I want to look at guys who have names that sound like they are nicknames, but are really just their actual birth names. These are the greatest real names in sports history. Ralph Lecoq did have a nickname, going by Pete Lecoq for most of his career, but either one works here for the former Cubs and Royals first baseman. Charles Manlove had a cup of coffee in the big leagues, playing catcher for just 5 total games. He was often known as Chick Manlove. Again, both work. You're not changing the funny. Chick actually makes it even better. This is Thomas Butts, whose nickname Pee-wee Butts undoubtedly elevated his name to another level. He started his career on the Negro League Atlanta Black Crackers. Just feel that real team name deserves a mention here too. Welcome Gaston played ball in the 1800s, and he holds the weird MLB record for most career walks without a strikeout at a rate of 13-0. Yeah, welcome to the video, Mr. Gaston. God Shamgod, representing the NBA, might have the coolest name ever. He was actually bullied for it in high school. Stupid bullies, if you ask me. And he briefly went by the name Shamgod Wells, adopting his mother's maiden name. But when he went to college, he tried to change it legally and was told it was going to cost $600, so God went back to being God. There's a dribbling move in basketball still named after him today that, when done right, can be absolutely filthy. How about Fair Hooker? The 6-year Cleveland Brown wide receiver absolutely shocks me that he never paid that $600 to change his name. He is absolutely the wide receiver one and maybe the MVP of the NFL all-time name team. Debatably even sports. I mean, what beats a Fair Hooker? Deshaun Watson does. Barkevious Mingo is actually a modern NFL player who sounds like a name straight out of the legendary Key and Peele skit. Like, there are names in there that are more believable than Barkevious. Dick Trickle is solid, he drove race cars. Jaquiz Rogers isn't bad. Guy Whymper is wonderful and terrific. Oh, no, sorry, that would be the next guy. Wonderful Terrific Mons Jr. Neither of those were an adjective. His first and middle name is Wonderful Terrific. He kept the idea of nicknames bringing versatile athletic prowess around. The guy made the NFL, a defensive back for the Niners in '78, and then 15 years later, he played minor league baseball for a while. His parents had 11 girls in a row and just kept going because his dad really wanted a boy. When number 12 finally popped out the way he wanted, he yelled in the hospital, "Wonderful, terrific," and then named his son that. The guy kinda went through a boy named Sue type of arc, being bullied as a kid, but learning to appreciate his name and having it make him stronger. He mentioned that anytime someone would say, "I wonder if it's gonna rain today," or any sentence with the word wonder in it, his head would dart around seeing who called him. And thankfully for us, he kept the name going in the family. He has a relative, Wonderful Mons IV, who just committed to play quarterback at Notre Dame, so maybe expect to see this name again soon.
Well, some guy would giggle and I'd get red, and some guy'd laugh and I'd bust his head. I'll tell you, life ain't easy for a boy named Wonderful Terrific Mons Jr.
DeColdis Crawford isn't quite a professional, a college wideout whose career seems like it is just about done. He went viral as a high school wide receiver for his name and a false rumor that was flying around that his middle name was Te'evaduit, which would have made his full name DeColdis Te'evaduit Crawford. It's not true, sadly his middle name is Juan, but I'm not complaining because we still have DeColdis Juan. He signed one of the greatest NIL deals in the short history we've had him though, partnering with an air conditioning company because, of course.
I'm so glad we called SOS. RAC is the coldest.
I'm always the coldest.
SOS to the rescue.
Hey, this is Dakota Crawford.
I actually had a class with and talked to DeColdest multiple times at the University of Nebraska. He's a cool guy. And here is definitely my personal favorite. 10 million. That's it. That's his name. An early MLB player was 10 million. Already with the last name Million, his grandma wanted him to stick out, so she suggested naming him 10. Later down the line, 10 Million had a daughter of his own, and that same grandmother, who I think was just a fan of chaos and foolishness, bribed him with $50 to name the baby girl Decillion, and he did it, making her name Decillion Million, which is the Herculean number of 1 with 33 zeros at the end of it, followed by million. I truly believe that the Key and Peele skit could have been even funnier and less realistic if they just did their homework to find real actual names that have existed through sports history.
Thomas Butts. Sparta! Georgia.
Welcome, Gaston. Seneca-ville, Ohio.
Archivius Mingo. Louisiana State.
Dick Trickle. Wisconsin, the state, not the college.
Wonderful, terrific. Mons Jr. Go Big Red.
Luscious Pussy, Eastern Illinois.
Charles Manlove. I'm from Philly, baby.
Camellia, University of Washington.
Luscious Pusey is also a bit of a cheat. He only played college football, and I admittedly don't know how I'm supposed to go about pronouncing that. It might be Pussy, but he was a linebacker at Eastern Illinois. He would at some point change his last name to Seymour, understandably so. And that does it. That wraps up our book on the Chronicles of Monikers in Athletics. Some were given, some were earned, some were self-proclaimed. And the book may be over, but there's infinite more blank pages at the back. Great nicknames I couldn't fit. Probably some I forgot about that I wish I put in here. And of course, the future. The new nicknames that haven't happened yet, because they will never stop coming, will continue to fill these pages forever. Let me know your favorite sports nickname that wasn't in the video, and I'll let you know if it deserved inclusion. We call them something because of their personality or what they did on the field, but the truth is, nicknames aren't for them. They're for us. We're the ones trying to find words for something we can't explain. If I did my job right, you'll forget the players, but you'll remember the names. Thank you.